Have you ever heard the phrase, the handwriting is on the wall? It means that the results of something is inevitable. It's been decided and it's right around the corner. It usually has a negative connotation to it and a sense of hopelessness. Now, are you aware that the origin of this phrase comes from the Bible? In matter of fact, it comes from a very dark place in Jewish history. At this time, Jerusalem was conquered by Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians. Their temple was destroyed, and the Babylonians took back all the different treasures that they had in the temple, such as goblets and so forth. And in Daniel chapter 5, we are told of a story of King Belshazzar, grandson of King Nebuchadnezzar. A quick word to describe this king would be oblivious. He was oblivious to how God got a hold of his grandfather. He was oblivious on how to run a kingdom and how to protect his own people. One night, after hosting a drunken party for the who's who of Babylon, he decides to bust out these goblets that were sacred treasures to the Israelites. At first glance, it would be easy to think that he did this to disregard the Israelite God. He wasn't intending to spit in the face of God. He had no faith in God. He had no clue that God even existed, nor did he have any care. There was only one thing on this king's mind, and it wasn't a God. It wasn't his people. It wasn't even his good name or image. It was about the pleasure of the moment. So God decided to get his attention this night, and the king and all his guests saw a human hand writing something on a wall. I think it's important to note here that God didn't send a prophet. He didn't send an angel. No, God delivered this message himself. It states that the king's face grew pale, and grew even paler when nobody could read the message to him. So the passage goes on to tell us that the queen remembered Daniel. Daniel had already interpreted dreams for other kings. So King Belshazzar summoned Daniel and promised him all the same things he promised everybody else, being clothed with purple and given a high position within the kingdom. So Daniel agreed to interpret the handwriting on the wall, but he denied any of the gifts. And here's God's message to the king. God has numbered your kingdom and has put it into it. You have been weighed on the scales and found deficient, and your kingdom has been divided and given over to the Medes and Persians. God wasn't messing around with this king. He was showing his power to him. And do you know how the king responded? Well, that's a trick question, because he really didn't. He didn't humble himself and submit to God like his grandfather Nebuchadnezzar did. He didn't even get angry and go against God. He just thanked Daniel for his interpretation and gave him what he promised. This king showed no fear of God. And do you know how long it took for God to enact the message that was on the wall? That very night, the king was slain. So my encouragement to all of us is to pay attention to the handwriting on the wall. God is almighty and sovereign, and we must submit to him. I want to thank KIKO Radio for airing this Word of Hope by Central Heights Baptist Church. I'm Pastor Rob.